Hi, Paul. Welcome.
Way to go, Chris. Way to go.
Thank you.
Can we mute Corey? That's got to be.
No, you can't.
There's got to be a way.
You only got to deal with me for like a little while, and then I'll be gone.
Seriously, you're wearing the wrong hat, Corey.
What should I be rocking my Santa Ana hat right now, or what?
Yeah.
I don't work for Santa Ana anymore.
Oh,
we're starting late on purpose. Corey's the first one on the agenda.
Yeah, and they're hoping that I'll leave before the agenda officially starts.
Yeah,
I don't have to say anything.
Yeah, you have to leave by 4:15. Let's stall for another 3 minutes.
I have it till 4:30, man. Ruben, why don't we get to see your face, huh?
That's privileged information.
Welcome.
Yeah, buddy, that's the office. That's where the magic happens, right there. Yeah. Is it just you there right now, or is Zed there too?
It's just me in my cube right now. Zed was going to try to join, but he's been running around all day, so we'll see if he can make it.
If you can make it. Right on.
So I think we're good to go now. Sorry about the delay on that, everybody.
Ok, entonces ya estamos listos para empezar. Disculpen por el retraso a todos. Mil disculpas.
So if I had to take off the screen share, I think, in order to activate the interpretation. So if you actually see the interpretation globe, if you can click on that, we're going to be adding our interpreters right now.
Bueno, tuvimos que salir de la llamada para poder agregar la función de interpretación, así que en unos momentos cuando la activemos, por favor, hagan clic en el globo terráqueo. Pueden escoger ahí su idioma si pueden verlo en la parte inferior de su pantalla.
And so, so yeah, I think how it works is when you click on the English, I think at this point, we all click on the English at the moment on the globe. I think it's on, it's actually on right now.
Y la manera en la que funciona, creo, es que todos tenemos que elegir el idioma inglés en este momento. If I may, Chris.
Go ahead.
If you want, I can just explain the function. Hi, everyone. My name is Juvia, and along with my colleague, Sagrario, we'll be providing interpretation for your training today. And so in a few minutes, you will see, in fact, it's actually already there, the interpretation globe. Go ahead and select the language you wish to hear and speak in. If we expect to have any folks speak in Spanish, we also suggest that all monolingual speakers select the language. So you want to be able to understand each other. That way you can understand each other. So obviously you have to select a language as well. But if you don't expect to have a bilingual dialogue, the English speakers do not need to select any of the channels. Para los oyentes en español, por favor, seleccione el idioma español. Hay un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Por favor, elija español y no salga de ese canal, permanezca en ese canal por el resto de la reunión, por favor. And you still have to assign us as interpreter, Chris.
And I'm going to do that right now. Thank you, Yuvia.
Sure.
So we're kind of a little bit behind on time. We're going to kind of move this along a little bit, but just want to quickly acknowledge the original caretakers of this land and inhabitants as well in the OC area, Achman and Tongvakish. They're a community that continue to live and thrive in the area, and just always want to make sure we're honoring them and their presence in the area. Also want to acknowledge that this program is made possible by the City of Santa Ana, a partnership through the City of Santa Ana, and funded through the Office of Traffic Safety, the California Office of Traffic Safety.
Chris, you want to share your screen?
Oh, apologies. Thank you. So we're going to skip a little bit on this one for now. We're going to do a little introduction on SAS. And we're actually going to try to just go straight into our first presentation for the day. So the main program today is to basically focus around learning about active transportation in the city and all the work that's kind of gone into it. And so there's been a lot of planning for the past 7-10 years. And so we're going to start off with our first presentation, actually, and I'm getting a little delayed right now with all these photos, but and our first presentation actually is going to be on the Safe Routes to School plan. So the 3 plans we'll be learning about today will be the Safe Routes to School plan and a kind of like a retrospective on 3 plans: the Active Transportation Plan, the Central Santa Ana Plan, and the Downtown Complete Streets Plan. And actually, all these photos actually represent a lot of different kind of components of these processes actually that happened during those. So I think first person we have so far is Joe. Corey, that's going to be talking about the Santa Ana Safe Routes to School Action Plan. So Corey, if you want to take it away.
All right. So what's interesting, the Santa Ana the Safe Routes to School plan actually was the last plan that we worked on in the city of Santa Ana over the last 6 years, I would say. The city engaged in a lot of planning efforts, recognizing that active transportation was a mode of transportation that was a necessity for many residents in Santa Ana, and particularly youth. So a Safe Routes to School focus has always kind of been embedded in everything that we were doing, but the city received grant funding to do a Safe Routes to School plan, and we were able to do all of the schools in the city of Santa Ana. That includes all the Santa Ana Unified School District, the Orange Unified School District, and the Garden Grove Unified School District. So the outreach process was probably the biggest part of the process that took up the most amount of time and was probably the most valuable. We conducted walking audits at each of it was like something like, and Ruben, you might be able to correct me, but I think it was like 62 or 64 schools.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That included high schools, elementary schools, middle schools, a couple charter schools, and all of them are schools that are attended by Santa Ana residents. Santa Ana is unique in the fact that more than 50% of the kids that go to Santa Ana schools walk to get to school, either walk or bike to get to school, mostly walk. And the fact that there are so many schools and so many students, I mean, there were some elementary schools that have more students than a lot of cities have at their high schools, more than 1,000 students at some of the elementary schools in Santa Ana. So we conducted walk audits at each of these schools. And one of the beautiful things about the community of Santa Ana is how involved the parents are in what's going on at the schools. How involved they are in particularly the moms in ensuring that their kids get safely to school, and ensuring that their kids get safely to school and get home safely from school. And they're very plugged in and engaged at the school. So a lot of times we would go to the schools and we would get there and there'd be like 25 moms there with strollers, with their younger ones, that were all there to provide input. It's usually during the school, would usually be during the school day, either during the morning or in the afternoon. Sometimes, some days we were at 2 different schools on the same day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And this was all done in partnership with Santa Ana Active Streets and with a consultant that was hired, which was the Alto Planning and Design. And I got to give a shout out to Rodrigo, who was kind of a force in for us in Santa Ana. He grew up in Mexico. The moms absolutely adored him. He got his traffic skills class and became a league certified bicycling instructor. Thanks to Santa Ana Active Streets and teaching their classes. I think he was even in one of the pictures that we're showing earlier. But we all went out to all of the different schools, Alta Planning, Fair and Peers, and we met with the parents and just listened to what they had to say. And as a result, we got probably the best input that we could have gotten from anybody was from the parents, from the kids that would come. At the high schools, the kids would come and participate in the walkouts with us and share what their experiences are walking to and from school. So the plan overall took, I think we spent about, Ruben, what is it? Did it end up being about 3 years from start to finish by the time the plan was finally drafted and adopted. But during that time, even while it was being worked on, the city of Santa Ana was already pursuing projects that were as they were being identified in the plan. The city was already securing funding for the project. So that's just kind of a little bit of background about the Safe Routes to School plan effort. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have in the next few minutes.
We'll be, if folks have any questions, if they can drop them in the chat, because we want to introduce our next presentation. But thank you, Corey, for that. And thank you for
You got it.
And
Shout out to Ruben for actually getting it finished up and getting it adopted. Attaboy.
In the nick of time.
Yeah, buddy. Attaboy.
And one thing to tie back as well to, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, Corey, but you were the first active transportation coordinator in the city. But I'd also say maybe competing with Paul Martin, who was the active transportation coordinator in Orange County or the OCTA.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for coming. So I think there was definitely a lot of that work, a lot of these even planning activities, were pushed by community members, but having folks like you in those kind of positions helped to also move the bar along the way as well too.
Yeah. We couldn't have done it without any of the things that are happening in Santa Ana right now. We couldn't have done without the partnerships that we had with community-based organizations, with other agencies, and the consultant staff. And I know Joe's going to talk a little bit later. I think Joe did like 60% of the plans that we did in Santa Ana while I was there. 3 out of the 5, right?
Close, yeah.
And so it, the fact that even our consultants were engaged with our community-based organizations, and ultimately we're hiring our community-based organizations to handle outreach, I think speaks volumes for a lot of the collaboration that we did in Santa Ana. So shout outs.
Awesome. So thank you, Corey. And so moving it along to Joe from KTUA. KTUA has been a consultant that's worked on the Downtown Complete Streets Plan, the Central Santa Ana Complete Streets Plan, and the Active Transportation Plan, which was also partnered with one of our partners, Latino with Access, as well too, in leading outreach efforts. So without further ado, though, Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Can you guys see my screen? You guys good? Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joe Punsalon. I'm with KTUA, and as Corey mentioned, I'll be briefly going over the Downtown Central and Active Transportation Plan that we helped complete for the city of Santa Ana. It's definitely, I think we were working with the city for continuously for about 4 to 6 years on these planning efforts. And as Corey mentioned, we did work a lot with community-based organizations such as SAS, Latino Health Access, even Orange County Health was a major factor in a lot of the efforts that we entailed as part of these 3 projects. So today I just want to really briefly go over kind of high level what those 3 projects were about, and some of the outcomes of that. And fortunately at the end, I'll be able to show kind of where the city stands on a lot of the projects that came about. Because I'm pretty sure there's some questions as far as what's all the construction that's happening in the streets of Santa Ana currently. And so a lot of it stems from a lot of the work our team, along with Corey and the CBOs, worked with these past few years. I'll be briefly going over three particularly complete streets and active transportation projects. The first one was started in 2014 to 2015, the Downtown Transit Zone Complete Streets Plan. We started this without Corey, about one third of the way in. Corey got on board, and we just kind of steamrolled with projects the rest of the way. This project really encompassed the downtown core of Santa Ana, kind of sort of like a pilot project in terms of community-based projects, community engagement, lots of workshops to really identify what those projects that the community really wanted in the downtown core, but also ensuring that we make connections to the rest of the city. Once that was complete, the expansion of outside of downtown. Now, how do we get outside of downtown and expand a little bit more in the core of Santa Ana? And so the Central Santa Ana Complete Streets plan came about, really looking at the core of the city, the central part of the city, making connections to downtown and the adjacent neighborhoods and cities around, with the focus on safe routes to parks, and really connecting. As you can see here, there's on the map, there are not a lot of existing bike facilities. There are now, but it's really trying to find what those gaps were, and really and diving into what the residents really wanted in terms of connectivity through Central Santa Ana. Well, that wasn't enough. So Central wasn't enough. So we ended up going citywide. So looking at the city in terms of a full-scale active transportation plan, now looking at connecting downtown, connecting Central, and really looking at the rest of the city and connections regionally to adjacent cities. So as folks that are living in Santa Ana but working outside of the city and vice versa have opportunities to travel intercity between Santa Ana and its adjacent neighbors. So 2014 to 2020, about 6 years worth of work. And so many of these three projects really had the same overlying goal: engaging the community to identify mobility needs. Corey mentioned, all the community engagement that came about in the Safe Routes to School plans. That's exactly what we did for all three of these projects. And I'll briefly go over some of those in detail, but it's really a community-driven, these three were really community-driven projects. And then prioritizing those projects based on data-driven, but primarily public support. Public support is great because that's really what provided us the input in terms of where people wanted to ride and bike and where they needed to see improvements. But we also had to combine that with data-driven analysis, collision data, propensity modeling, active where our transit stops, where the high boardings and the lightings, because that's really what's important also in terms of getting grant applications and finding why you need this project. So it's with the data behind it. But then also looking at complete street conceptual designs. It's one thing to say, I want to have something, an improvement like a mid-block crossing or curb extensions, but will it fit? So throughout all three projects, we did go into conceptual street designs to really help with either integration into CIP projects or into grant procurement. And I would have to say the city has been super successful in going after grant pursuits to get these projects built, hence why you see a lot of construction already within the city itself. So the downtown Santa Ana Complete Streets Plan really is bounded by Flower Street, Civic, Grand, and First Street. At the time when we were working on the project, only Civic had some bike lanes. Everything out there was nothing else there. Now you're seeing a lot more that's already in the downtown area. Really, the focus of it was downtown, making sure we have access to the transportation center, schools, and the parks within the neighborhood, but really trying to get more people to activate downtown area, provide a lot more placemaking and a lot more activity, so folks can get to downtown in without having to drive. And then Central Santa Ana, bounded by Harbor, Civic Drive, Civic Center, Standard, and Warner. It's a lot larger of an area, but this one was more focused around the schools and parks, improving some of the transit and the neighborhood connectivity within Central Santa Ana. In this particular plan, we did do a 4-day workshop We did walk and bike tour similar to downtown Santa Ana. We did a 3-day workshop for downtown Santa Ana, walk and bike tours. Here for Central, we ended up doing also a demonstration project right in front of the senior center to kind of highlight some of the things that you can do on the streets in terms of protected bikeways. And then we also installed a parklet. There's also a series of advisory meetings, technical advisory meetings, and other additional follow-up recommendation workshops where we went back to the public with conceptual designs, and they're able to provide input, and then we were able to finalize those designs for the city to help procure grants. And then the Santa Ana Active Transportation Plan, really just closing all the gaps around the city, really focusing on pedestrian safe routes to parks, schools, and then additional corridor designs. This one, since we did cover the rest of the city, we had more workshops. So we tried to hit every quadrant around the city. So we had a geographic presence in every part of the city to gather input. Again, we also had advisory meetings, workshops, recommendations, workshops, a series of neighborhood presentations that was led by LHA. And we also did some door-to-door activities, pop-up workshops, things of that nature, which I'll discuss in a little bit. Those multi-day workshops, community engagement, there's various ways of doing it. Obviously, the world we're in right now is certainly different. So we were fortunate to get these done before the pandemic hit, but we were able to do a lot of this in person. So inviting folks over to our workshop locations, having maps, just having, just honest general discussions about what they would like to see improved within their community. And then also walking the streets and biking the streets, really to understand, to educate, for us to get educated on the needs of the residents, but also for the residents to be educated on the different amenities and things that's at their disposal in terms of what they would like to see and recommend in terms of traffic and bike countermeasures to make walking and biking important. So these multi-day workshops encompassed walk audits, active workshops, consensus building, snacks, all sorts of stuff. It was really like a festival, kind of like a 3-4 day parties that we would have. And it was a lot of fun. We certainly had a great time meeting a lot of new people, and it was great to have a lot of the folks also attend all 4 days, which was great. Then we had the advisory group meetings, which is the health agencies, OCTA, Caltrans. They're all part of these advisory groups to kind of help steer the project in terms of some of the technical aspects of the designs and things that are needed to really, a lot of these projects were grant funded, so we had to make sure that we were meeting all those requirements. But not that they were only a technical group, but we also invited many of the residents to be part of this group because they did have a large say in what's going to be recommended in their cities. And also we actually invited a lot of the kids and a lot of schools and students who wanted to participate. So we had a lot of high school kids that like to attend and provide their input. So that was great. In terms of the walking and bike tours, Chris actually led Chris and Corey, I believe Paul even led some of the bike tours or participated in some of the bike tours for our Central Santa Ana. But we also did a series of walk audits, walking tours, to really just to kind of gather input and really just walk and talk with the residents. It's also nice to just get outside and be able to walk the streets with new members of the community and the consultant team. So really just kind of chat it up and not have to be cooped up in a room looking at maps. And obviously the biggest thing is also the social media and online engagement. We developed different branding styles for each of those projects because of their unique nature, but also looking at ways to gather input for those that could not attend the workshops throughout the project. So there's a lot of tools that we use, story maps, surveys, but honestly, a lot of the biggest input we got, or the most abundant input we got, was really those workshops and meeting people face to face. Speaking of meeting face to face, that leads to Latino Health Access and Santa Ana Active Streets really getting into the community and trying to get folks to attend our workshops. We incentivized the workshops, provided, I believe SAS provided free bikes. We provided helmets and lights, things of that nature for those to come out and participate and maybe even win a prize, get some food, some snacks. Really just try to get folks out there. We also attended events. We hosted booths out at doing pop-up workshops to get folks to that. The audience is already there, so a lot of it really is just trying to get their input while we're already engaged in that activity. And like I said earlier, we did some tactical urbanism / demonstration projects with demonstrating a cycle track. We had pocket parks out there. LHA was out with the kids and also helping us out, hosting these events. We had tactile tools for folks to try to design their street. Other activities, we had kids activities, Legos, things like that to keep the kids entertained. So that way we can garner some more attendance for our workshops. So in summary, through all those workshops, I would say it's, close to probably, 15 some days of total, 15 to 20 some days of total just workshops engaging with residents. These are some of the concerns. I won't read them all the way out, but lighting, bike lanes, homeless, need for traffic calming, maintenance, more trees, skate parks, access to skate parks was one of those other things that we heard quite a bit as well. So it's really nothing new here in terms of what we heard, but really it came down to what were their concerns and where would they like to see those improvements, and that's where those concepts came about. And in terms of what they're looking for, here's an example of some of the treatments we looked at: separated bikeways that you see on Bristol, your Orange Avenue multi-use path, your bike lanes on your arterials, and then some of your bike boulevards such as Bishop and Bush Street. On terms of pedestrian traffic calming treatments, we looked at your enhanced pedestrian crossings RFPs. Here's one on Civic Center. Your high visibility crosswalks, which you're now seeing throughout the city, the one in downtown, some curb extensions to increase some placemaking and transit improvements. I think one of the things we heard a lot is we want to have shelters and some additional lighting for safety at the transit stops. Then overall traffic calming improvements, decorative crosswalks, traffic circles, which you're seeing much more in the city, effective ways to calm traffic but still keep traffic moving, speed humps, curb extensions, and lane narrowing to kind of slow those cars down, but also adding additional pedestrian space. And in terms of the data I'd mentioned earlier, a lot of it was driven by community input. In our workshops, we had everyone vote on what they would like to see. We tallied those votes. Those became really our top priority projects. And then all the other projects that weren't voted on by the community, we use data-driven analysis, safety collisions, the demographics, transit use, health factors, cost benefit to really hone those projects down that weren't provided by the community. So in summary, I'm going to kind of wrap up the three projects and what the projects entail. Downtown Santa Ana Complete Streets, we ended up with 5 projects. We moved into conceptual design at an estimate of about $9 million. Almost all these projects are either almost complete or complete. Here's an example of one of the conceptual designs we did back in 2014, 2015, and to the right, it's already in construction, which is awesome. Central Santa Ana, we had 11 projects come to fruition through that planning process with estimated cost of about $54 million. Looking primarily at the corridor, the arterials and collector streets throughout that city. For example, here is a concept that we did for Standard Avenue in terms of what it could look like with the recommendations that the city helped us with and the residents really wanted. And a lot of this is really driven by the city as well in terms of their proactiveness and looking at different ways to really get the residents and the designs on to fruition so that they can be competitive in grant applications, but not only that, but also to be really helping the residents be able to walk and bike freely and safely throughout the city. And the rendering, some of the renderings we had done. This is actually a project that Paul and Ruben are heading up currently as we speak. And then finally, the Santa Ana Active Transportation Plan, 67 projects out of that, since we are looking at closing a lot of the gaps in the city. So it's a much larger scale project, about $65 million worth of estimated costs for future projects. A lot of those projects are maybe smaller projects where you just need to stripe some bike lanes, some bike boulevards, some class 3 neighborhood greenways, low cost. And then you've also got some larger ones where we're looking at class 1 facilities, multi-use path facilities, and protected bikeways. That one also entailed conceptual drawings. We did more of a stylized cut sheets for that because it was such a larger scale project, but we did do 35 conceptual designs in terms of feasibility and things of that nature. So it helps the city with also future grant procurement. So all 3 projects did go through the design phase in terms of feasibility for many of the projects. So finally, here's the last slide. I worked with Mauricio a few weeks ago on kind of the progress of some of these projects, and here's where a lot of it stands currently. Most of the top 5 have already in construction or completed or came from the downtown Santa Ana plan, and the rest are from the central Santa Ana plan and design phase, such as Standard, which I mentioned Paul and Ruben are working on. And then, you know, the Santa Ana ATP plans are next to be in line for the next cycle of grant, cycle of ATP and other grant programs that are going to be coming online in the future. So for those that are, you know, Santa Ana residents, you know, I would say be thankful for everything that the city and that is doing for in terms of your streets, because there's not a lot of cities out there that are really doing this much in this short amount of time to improve active transportation and really helping the residents out in terms of providing access to transit and all the needs you have in the city. So while there's a lot of construction going on, once it's all said and done, you guys are going to love it. So kudos to the city for keeping everything moving. So that kind of concludes my presentation. I have a few minutes to answer questions, and then I do have another meeting to run off to. So floor is yours, Chris. Let me know. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And also, I think shout out to late entry at Charis or Rosario. Yes, with LHA was definitely very big, strong lead during the active transportation plan for a lot of the outreach efforts as well too. So
is Charis online?
I think so.
Oh, hey, Charis.
All right. I think she was a second ago. Yes, she is. You're muted, but yeah, if you want to say anything.
Hi. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you as well. I see a hand raised and I see one question. I guess, let's see who raised the hand. Oh, Jose, yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you had a question.
Yes, so thank you and great presentation, Joe. My question is, what made the different plans and proposals more competitive for grants? So what made them stand out more?
2 things. So I think the community engagement process was robust, and when you're looking for a grant program like for example, the Caltrans ATP program, I think 1/3 of it is how did you engage the community and how did you come up with those projects? And so since we did multi-day charrettes, multi-day workshops, you know, we pretty much tried to run the gamut in terms of trying to get folks to provide input on these projects. So having really a plethora of tools at our disposal, but primarily being out in the neighborhoods and talking to folks, and making sure you document all that. It was one key factor in a lot of that set these projects apart. But the other is the designs of the streets. You know, we weren't just, you know, and some streets, depending on the feasibility, we're adding bike lanes, but there's some streets like Standard McFadden where we're looking at protected bikeways, something that really was kind of in its infancy back in the day. You're seeing it more common now, but back in the day, we were starting to look at what those things would look like in Santa Ana, and if the city was on board, and they certainly were. And so I think you'll also have to not just be closing gaps, but you have to be doing something a little bit extra in order to be competitive and set yourself apart from the other applicants, because it's really, really, really competitive nowadays.
Thank you.
And there's a question, I think, on the outreach, maybe this last question, and then we can move on to the city of Santa Ana. And if anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well, too. It's asking, I guess, what neighborhood associations were visited. I'm assuming it's kind of probably maybe asking about, like, you know, I think I'm very familiar with the outreach strategy that, you know, a lot of the activities, door knocking, surveys was really getting out into the streets. So I'm not sure if there was a taking these kind of processes into neighborhood associations. But I guess wanted to maybe ask, ask a little bit further, like, how was this strategy guided? It sounded like it was that kind of go out into the street and
from what I recall, we had LHA take the lead on a lot of that, and they already had contacts in a lot of those neighborhoods. So they would sit in some of the neighborhood association meetings. We provided flyers. We went door to door, particularly throughout the AT, but actually, both were, I would say the ATP were a little bit, we did a lot more door to door for the last project because we were spread out throughout the city. And so wherever we were located, whichever park or rec center we were going to conduct the workshop in is where our outreach team went out and started to talk to the neighborhood associations and really go door to door and get folks to attend. And it was very successful. I don't know offhand how many we talked to in terms of door to door or those neighborhood associations, but we certainly did start with those contacts, figure out a way, what's the best way to reach the residents. And then we followed through with the best we could in terms of getting folks out to our workshops. And if they couldn't go to the workshops, the flyers we handed out did have links to the website that they could provide those inputs, like I had showed earlier, story maps and online surveys.
Thank you, Joe. And if folks stick around, we're going to be having a second portion. We're actually going to be going through the active transportation plan. It's quite a big document. Most of these documents are pretty large. Most planning documents are large, and they have a lot of different things like programs, policies, but we're mainly going to be focusing on infrastructure. But if you have any other questions about other components about the plan, feel free to share. But I guess maybe we can move on to our next portion with Ruben. It seems like, Joe, you kind of covered a lot of it, but Ruben, if you want to add any other kind of components, since now we have the plan, I think the idea is, like Joe said, we had definitely seen a lot of these changes on the street. So what does that mean for the city? So if, feel free to share your screen or however you want to present.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Definitely Joe and Corey did cover a lot. We here in the city are kind of grateful to have had all those partnerships and the role of Corey when he was here, because he helped, I guess, pave the road for what we're doing now. A lot of plans were prepared, and we're continuing to use those to pursue funding and improvements throughout the city. The active transportation continues to be a main focus here for the city. We want to make sure that whatever was incorporated into all of these plans that the community had major input on, that we deliver and to our commitment that we made at some point when these plans were being created. Let me see, I think I have something, a small presentation that I think I can share. Let me see here. I'm trying to share, oh, here it is. You guys can see that screen of mine, active transportation program grants. Okay, great. So I'm just going to talk very, very briefly here on okay, where all these plans kind of where the rubber meets the road. It's really going after funding. As you guys have heard, we have been fortunate and successful in obtaining grants for the city to install all the infrastructure that these plans have identified as a need for the city. This is kind of what in the past couple of years has our office has looked like in preparing all of these grant applications. I believe this one was 2018, and this past cycle 5 round of applications, we submitted 21 applications. And that was a major undertaking. It's been the largest that we completed. Unfortunately, we haven't, this last round weren't as successful as we have been in the prior years, but nonetheless, we're not going to let that stop us from continuing to pursue. So as it's been mentioned in the past, the planning continues, and a lot of it was done, but a lot of these plans we're going to have to update at some point or another, make sure they don't go stale, make sure that the community's input and desires continue to be the same, the needs continue to be the same. They continue to focus on bikeway improvements, bike lanes, detection, signage, for all of these bikeway infrastructures. We continue to apply for sidewalk improvements, missing sidewalks, wheelchair ramps that are either non-compliant or non-existent. Widening of sidewalks for First Street is a perfect example of that between Flower and Standard that we're currently working on, and hopefully be able to start construction in the near future. A lot of crossing improvements as was shared, and an educational outreach component, this is kind of part of that, and then a lot of the other grants sometimes also include educational, to go out to the schools and educate the youth on how to use all this new infrastructure that they're seeing throughout the city. A little bit of a breakdown here, and for the past couple of years, a few years, kind of in 2014 when we started tracking and the grant efforts. We can see that so far we've been successful at about $79 million in grants for the city. In this current, as I mentioned earlier, current Cycle 5 2020 grant application, it went down, but back in 2014 we were only at 4. So I suspect this is going to be kind of a trend. We'd like it to be in the upward all the time. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the case, but that's okay. And that's not going to stop us from, like I said, continuing to pursue grant funds. A few projects that I kind of wanted to highlight as respect to bike lanes. Class 2 bike lanes throughout the city. We have about 15.5 miles of Class 2 bike lanes installed so far. We still have a few here noted, 4.5 of miles being proposed. And I'm sure there's a few more. This is just kind of what I would say to put together for this present meeting here. Altogether, planned 20 miles, just over 20 miles of bike lane Class 2 infrastructure. Going all the way back to 2006. Memory lane here. This was one of our my first projects when I was I used to be an intern here for the city, and that was one of the few projects that kind of started the whole active transportation bike lane effort here for the city, and it has definitely evolved since then. Class 3 bike lanes so far, we have about 4 miles in place. We and about another 2 miles proposed, identified here, total about a little bit over 6 miles. Class 4 bike lanes, these are like the ones on Bristol between 17 and Washington, 2.91 so far that are going to be or are already in place. Willits is one of them that I believe someone may have pointed out a little bit earlier. Willits between Fairview and Reid that we're currently doing the design for, and we're trying to start construction in the near future here. But we have all these other proposed protected bike class 4 lanes throughout the city, another 4 miles worth, totaling about 7 miles. Altogether, I have here, we have about 33.5 miles of bike lane infrastructure that we are either about half of it already in place, and the rest still, trying to pursue to get in the ground. That, along with, with a lot of pedestrian and infrastructure improvements, as I mentioned before. This last on the 2020 round of applications for ATP Cycle 5, it was 21 applications. They totaled about $141 million of ask. There is an augmentation, request from the CTC to the state for them to add additional $2 billion in budget. If that were to materialize, we were looking at the list, we have a potential of getting about another, $90 million in projects. If that were to get approved and input into the California budget, given all the surplus that the state has seen. We're hoping for that, but if not all of it, at least some. And based on what that list showed, it looks like we have a good chance of getting a good portion of those. That completes my presentation. Just wanted to give everybody a quick, overview of what it is we're doing, and wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, active transportation does continue to be, like I said earlier, a main focus for the city, and to provide the safety needs that our community, to address the safety needs that our community has. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Appreciate that. And question in the chat: what are Class 3 and Class 4 bike lanes? Class 3 bike lanes are sometimes called bike boulevards. You can probably notice them as like the bike person in the middle of the road, like a little square with an arrow pointing in a direction. But basically, it kind of identifies where a kind of more comfortable route would be to actually ride your bike. So it might be a little slower, might have some signage, so that'll say like share the road. So just kind of like saying that this is an area where it might feel a little bit more comfortable to ride your bike. And Class 4 would be something more along the lines of, let me see, which ones are Class 4?
Bristol.
Bristol. Edinger has a parking protected bike lane. I guess that could probably be considered a Class 4. So something that has a physical barrier between the travel for bicyclists and cars. And usually it has a barrier, like a concrete barrier, and Bristol is probably the most common one that you see in the city. And I have a hand up. Maria, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Maria, and I'm born and raised in Santana. So I've seen or witnessed the evolution, I guess you can say, of active transportation in the city. And I think I just have a concern, along with many other people that I know that have a similar concern, in regards to active transportation equity, and how we can avoid, or not even avoid at this point, but how we can address issues of the intersections of housing and active transportation in regards to gentrification and displacement. Because I reviewed the active transportation plans previously, and I realized that there's no mentions of race, and we all know that Santana is predominantly Latinx, predominantly low income. So I mean, growing up, you see los señores y las señoras on their bikes to work, and I just have only witnessed this growing concern of active transportation, which is appreciated, because I as presented here, it's been a long-term effort. But how is the city trying to address concerns of equity gentrification and displacement, because we, as a planner myself, I've done research on how, like, like transportation development can be linked to gentrification and displacement, with like rising rents and increased interest in the city as it upgrades, if you can say that. But yeah, I know that's a very complicated question, but I would appreciate an answer.
Well, yeah, thank you for that question. We do understand that that concern. However, precisely for that reason is why all these plans involve the community and on every step of the way. And we try to reach to everyone within the areas that those plans were being prepared in, and being inclusive of everyone, and is how we try to kind of bridge that. And the projects that we're putting in are not a result of simply trying to make the city more attractive or better looking. It's to address the safety concerns that the community has as a result of the need for them to walk and bike to school and work. It's not a commodity. It's not a luxury for this community. It's a need, and the need can be seen by by the collision patterns that we see throughout the city. I believe the federal government ranked us in sometime in the early 2000s as one of the cities with the highest rate of mortality and collisions in the state or in the country, I think, even for that matter. And so again, it's not a matter of these infrastructure improvements being a luxury or a point of trying to make the city look better to attract community or interest from individuals outside of the city. It's really to help make it safer for the everyday residents, constituents of the city, that need to get to and from work and to and from school. They're already using these streets, these sidewalks. We're just trying to make it better for them.
I have a follow-up question. But I also don't want to take up too much space. So if anybody else has a question.
I can chime in a little bit, being a part of, I guess, a little bit of the outreach process as well too. And so one of the things, thank you, Maria, for your question. I remember during the process, specifically the active transportation plan process, we did hear there was concerns around displacement and gentrification. And so, those were stories as well, and concerns that were in some way included in the process. If you actually look at the plan, those are things that were mentioned, like these are things that are concerns. So I think right now we're mainly talking about the infrastructure, and I think that's really important. There are people's lives that are lost when the streets are the way they are currently and not safe, bicycle and pedestrian oriented. But if you, one of the chapters on the policies and procedures, it actually identifies different policies that kind of talk about that, doing stuff like looking into a just cause eviction, doing stuff like affordable housing. So there are policies in there. I guess maybe I can follow up with that question. So this is mostly infrastructure. I guess maybe Ruben, or when these documents have these policies and procedures, I guess how can the community be involved to also prioritize these policies and procedures? Don't want to kind of veer too off topic off that, but I guess what does that have in relation to this overall planning initiative, if it's kind of addressing these kind of concerns that folks have?
Well, I know that, for example, the project that we're currently working on, and for that matter, every major project that we eventually get funding for and get into a design phase, for example, Standard, McFadden, those are major projects, First Street, those, even though they've already been we've already reached out to the community to get their input, and when preparing a conceptual plan, we are now now that we're in the design phase, we're going to go back out to the community to once again let them know what we're doing, and that, and acknowledge and make them aware that whatever input they gave the community, the city in the past, is now, you know, coming to fruition, and they can continue to get involved by going to these events that we're going to try to host along the corridor of these projects. And so I guess in short is the community can continue to get involved and give us their input by attending these events that we host. And then by going to the city council when our projects are being recommended for award for construction, you know. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the community to come in and give their perspective regarding the projects that are being proposed.
But I think also the city should be more proactive. Hi, Ruben. Because the recommendations from, and thank you, Maria, for bringing that up, because I think it's important for all the people that was involved during the planning process. That's what displacement, gentrification was one of their main concerns. And as community-based organization working with the community, that was also something that when we were doing the outreach, we didn't want to be the ones advocating for changes that at the end, as unintended consequences, will cause displacement. So if you know that creating changes in the infrastructure will cause displacement, it's not unintended. So you have to be intentional in how you can prevent that. So I think, yes, the community can still give feedback and recommendations. And I agree that we should keep going to city council, keep the advocacy, but internally, the different departments needs to work together as well, and work in collaboration and in communication, and to also prevent that displacement and gentrification. I'm just like adding that point there. Yeah, it's not just leave it to the community to keep advocating, but I think as a staff internally, you can be an advocate for the community too, and work in collaboration with other departments as well that can also help. Keep your communication with your staff, with your director and the directors as well. So you have these conversations internally too.
Right.
Just saying.
No, absolutely. And that communication is ongoing, of course.
Okay, last question, and then we're gonna move, I think, straight into the activity. But if Maria, you have your hand up, if you had any last thing, or if anybody else had any last comments.
I just wanted to echo what Rosario said, so thank you for saying that. But I'm looking at the policies right now, so but are there like any associated implementation actions or just policies alone? Because that's very superficial at the end of the day. And if residents were raising these concerns at the beginning of this and throughout the creation of this plan, then there should definitely be follow-up. That's not the responsibility on the constituents, but the responsibility on the city. So I would like to know like how these policies are being implemented and what associated actions accompany them. And that should definitely be told to because the residents that were part of this creation, they're probably just left thinking like, oh, well, what happened with that besides what they see on the streets? And that's important too, but you know, follow-up is important as well.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Ruben?
No, absolutely. You know, obviously, like I said, like I said in the past, you know, it's keeping that communication going. You know, both as Charis, you know, mentioned internally, and with the community and making sure that, you know, that communication doesn't stop.
And Ruben, there's a specific actions in that document. I think it's important to, every time that the city is like in the implementation of a project, review those policies, those recommendations, and follow what the community recommended, and those policies are there.
Right.
Can I say something really quick? I think when you said that the infrastructure, like the bike lanes, it's not a luxury for us, it's a need because our city is dangerous to pedestrians and bicyclists. It made me think about how maybe in cities where the population is maybe more white, biking is not it is a luxury for them, you know, and here in Santa Ana, it's a need. So it does like really paint the picture of what kind of city this is. And so the idea of what biking is in this community is different than what biking is like maybe in a richer city. So like maybe sometimes when people see a cyclist like well dressed, like they're all equipped and stuff, they're like, biking is not for me. You know, the view of biking is different. So sometimes we do wish that it was a luxury, you know?
And to a part of the community, I mean, it is, you know, in the after hours of after work, or, you know, after school, obviously, you know, there is that component of need, you know, of needing the infrastructure to be able to get to one place to another. But there's also that component of, in that portion of the community that, you know, in the afternoons to keep an active lifestyle, to keep themselves healthy. So, you know, we're trying to, this infrastructure does, you know, serve both of those, you know, community members, those type of community members.
Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Ruben, for kind of sharing as well in the cities, kind of where the city's at, and thanks everybody for your questions as well too. Definitely want to keep on this conversation going. I think our next workshop, and kind of giving an early preview, is we're actually going to be talking about mobility justice. Our work right now as SAS focuses around bicycling and pedestrian issues, but actually talking about the bodies behind it. So those identities, so all those kind of different things. So thinking past the infrastructure and forward toward all those other things that are intersecting, whether it's the housing, whether if, you know, walking while trans and being female is not going to make a difference if your sidewalk's good. There's other reasons why like mobility also is affected. So continuing kind of that push toward what mobility really means and what access really means. And also just, you know, limitations of, you know, like it's the whole issues of displacement and those connections. So we'll definitely hope to continue kind of these conversations and unfolding what active transportation should be going toward in the future. So if folks want to still stick around, so I'm going to be leading a breakout group with Maria. So it's going to be 2 groups. So we're going to kind of take this time to learn a little bit about how to navigate the 2 different kinds of plans. So one being the Safe Routes to School plan. There's a lot of walk audits, there's different kind of projects in it. And there's actually and with the Santa Ana Active Transportation Plan, it's a 300+ document. So we're narrowing it down to just the priority projects. And we wanted to kind of help folks go through and see like what kind of corridors in their community could possibly look like. These are kind of projects that the city is actually applying for grants. And we've heard in the past, like, oh, hey, why is that roundabout or traffic circle there? And we kind of want to like expose them. This is kind of this was the environment it was in. This is kind of what was happening during the planning, those planning phases, and how it got created in the way it did. So, so yeah, we're going to be doing a quick breakout group. Maria, are you ready for that by any chance? So let's
just real quick, do I need a document up for the group at all?
Yeah, here I'm gonna drop in the Safe Routes to School plan.
Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, there's a lot of documents that the city has done. There's the Vision Zero plan, which aims to try to reduce collisions down to zero. And so we'll be sharing out those links for all these different documents as well too. So let's see. I'm gonna start this breakout room. Sign automatically. Oh. Recruit. Okay. And if anybody in the presentation or in the group right now want to learn about some of the school areas that might have some changes, feel free to drop it in the chat. And if you want to stick around with me, I will be as well around to lead that conversation.
Hey, Chris. Hello.
Hey, Keenan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
It's kind of malfunctioning.
Yeah, we had a few folks, so I think we're gonna try this again. And I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, I think, you know, we might just end up just doing one group. Well, here, well, at least I can start sharing it here, here right now.
Yeah, we're kind of in our own breakout.
Yeah, so we can just do it here. So the oof. Okay. So the priority projects, we basically extracted the priority projects chapter. And so it's on chapter 5 is where the projects are. Explains the how it was, things were prioritized, the list of projects, then some maps. What we changed though, that was kind of having some difficulty with navigating this document was the 1, 2, 3, 4 through 35. We added some page numbers. So now we can at least jump to each project to actually take a look and see what's there. So I guess maybe we can pick out one of them. Paul, any interest in choosing one of these corridors?
Sorry, I'm looking at it right now. How about Segerstrom, number 12?
Number 12.
And
I'm
Mitch
like,
is,
okay, I was talking.
Oh, everyone's, it looks like everyone's back, Chris.
Here, I'm gonna open up the rooms again. I don't know why it got I don't know why it got changed like that. So I'm just gonna
We were given a 111 seconds.
I
know.
know.
here. Let me see. Breakout room close after 30 minutes.
You didn't go over the whole document in 2 minutes?
We're done.
Not even intros, like catching up on how you're doing.
Come on, Chris. Maria did the whole thing.
Okay, I think yeah, we can do this.
Bye.
Bye.
So go to your rooms now. Bye.
You're muted, Chris.
I'm not on my A game today, people. Yeah, I was like, how did your presentations go? I was like, this The Last of Us, but I was actually hoping I could have jumped into yours, Maria, because I actually don't know the Safe Routes to School action plan as much. But yeah, how did y'all's conversation go?
I think we were pretty familiar with the project. So we essentially talked about how impressed we were with the project, and that the city was able to do all the walkability audits for every single school in all those 3 districts. But we even went as far as to like figure out how we can engage Santa Ana schools come fall and spring. So because we attend the Santa Ana Unified School District Wellness meetings, and they're already on board with Walk to School Day every year, except for last year. It's like we can probably loop in OC STEP, the Safe Travels Education Program that OCTA has received funding for, and just start in with doing Safe Routes to School activities with Gung Ho schools. Like they're already familiar, like it's in the culture of the school district already. Like they know about that. I think they just need to be offered and educated on the benefits of incorporating the other Safe Routes to School activities. But do you want me to, I know, well, we gotta go. It's like 7 minutes over, sorry, but there's a menu of activities that the schools can choose from to implement. And Charis and her team are in charge and leading the way with doing outreach. But if there's, I'll be connecting if they're not at the wellness meetings or any of the other Santa Ana meetings that we attend, to make sure that schools are on board and continue to be champions in Santa Ana. Thanks.
Awesome, cool, thank you, Maria. Keenan, Paul, I think it's been a while since I've looked at that document. Any kind of little key takeaways from it? No. We just looked at First Street. Oh, Keenan, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have too much time to look at it, but I think from what we were studying on for my senior design project on First Street was that, yeah, and some sort of intervention is really needed because people ride, there's no shoulder on First Street and the sidewalks are often busy. So cars are moving at 40 miles per hour. And, you know, bikers have to go like in that gutter essentially. So it's pretty dangerous. So some sort of intervention, whether it's, and it seems like you have to take out the lane no matter what, since there's no shoulder. So yeah, cars are gonna have to give.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'd jump in, Chris. Just my statement is just that the planning and the goals in the Santa Ana documents are very bold. So it'll be important as time goes on, as some of the projects are implemented. If there's pushback from the community and backlash against removing travel lanes and potential concerns about traffic congestion, that I would just be on the lookout, and it will be important for the community to really speak up for these improvements, to really rely on all the outreach and engagement that's occurred, but also being conscious of some of the challenges, like the woman earlier was talking about potential for gentrification and displacement and what those impacts might be, the unintended consequences. We don't really have a good answer in the industry, frankly. I think that you saw that in the response. It's still very hard to figure out, and you know, balancing that is going to be difficult.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think during the put in the chat, another good recommendation of keeping regular quarterly meetings to get updates from everyone, seeing how to support and move things forward. It sounds like a great idea. I think definitely working more kind of collaboratively to talk about those issues around gentrification. And, you know, I think it's always going to be a balance where, you know, the streets don't get safer, then people also keep losing their lives, but then also they also are impacted in a lot of different ways. That's not just, you know, losing and their lives are getting injured. So I think definitely always making sure to there's always going to be that balance between the immediate like loss of life or injury, but also making sure that they stay and everything as well too, and stay and remain and thrive. So
right.
But thanks everybody for participating. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll be following up there in the near future. So thanks for participating, and thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.